From the heart of the city too busy to hate. A progressive voice making too much sense for corporate media's comfort. This is The Ron Show, where we the people come first. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Thank you for listening, whether it's on Georgia Now, weekdays 4 to 6 p.m., the replay weekdays after 8 to 10 a.m., or at Progressive Voices via TuneIn at 11 p.m. Or if you listen via podcast, hey, that's one way to do it. We appreciate you doing so. So there's so much stuff to really dive into today, headline-wise, heading into the weekend. Normally, they call Friday, I don't know, those of you who remember watching The West Wing back in the day, they would call Friday garbage day, trash day, right? They would just put all the stories out that they don't want you to really focus on because we're already focusing on what we're going to do this weekend. I mean, like, I am kind of toying with the idea of going to a high school football game. My alma mater is playing up in some town just south of Chattanooga. So I'm kind of thinking I might do that. See, my mind's already distracted, and I forgot, by the way, I have someone on the phone that I'm going to talk with. And I want to introduce you to this young lady because she is what is the official title, Alexis? Give me the title real quick before I introduce you.
The official title is News Director of Georgia Now News.
Okay, I wasn't sure if we'd come up with something else like Information Director or something very Baghdad Bobby or whatever. But anyway,
you know what? That is on my payroll.
There you go.
Thing. So maybe it is Informational Director.
There you go. Let's first order of business is knowing what our job title is. Anyway, Alexis Young joins me. She is essentially the News Director, the Information Director at Georgia Now, and we're really excited to have her on our little fledgling network, and I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking with her to give her the Ron Show treatment. I have folks who run for office all the time on the show, folks who are in office, advocates of organizations, but it's time to let you guys behind the curtain a little bit on what we're building here at Georgia Now. And then I promise you, we'll get to the headlines. There's so much stuff to talk about. In fact, Alexis can even help me with some of that. But I just wanted to introduce you to Alexis and what's going on at Georgia Now. So Georgia Now, on the App Store, Google Play, or at heargeorgianow.com. Also on iHeartRadio. I believe through iHeartRadio you can listen on your Amazon devices. I don't want to say her name too loud because she's just in the other room. But in fact, I have to be careful when I say your name because she lights up. So Georgia Now is more than just, that's where you can listen to The Ron Show or you can listen to Stephanie Miller or Tom Hartman or the Politics Bar. No, Georgia Now is also a news venture where you can get your news breaks at the top and bottom of the hour from CBS News Radio and our own news department, which Alexis Young heads. Anyway, hi, how are you today?
I am well. You know, as you said earlier, it is a busy News Friday. Right? So I'm trying to scramble to get everything together, but we're going to make it work and we're making it happen.
I'm glad to hear that. Let's see. The first order of business I want to talk a little bit about is, give us a little bit of your background and let's let folks know a little bit about Alexis.
Absolutely. I'll see if I can give my spiel succinctly enough, but I am born and raised in Georgia. I graduated from high school out in Loganville, Georgia. From there, I went to Arizona State, where I studied journalism, and I was at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. Nice. So I got my undergrad as well as my graduate degree from there. And once I got out of there was a 5 years living in Arizona. I left there to be a political reporter in a news show in Albany, New York, that was funny enough called New York Now. It was a weekly public affairs show, and we were working out of the legislative correspondence office during legislative session and things like that. Then I got the opportunity to sort of come back home in a way, at least regionally. I was an environmental justice reporter in New Orleans. And then during college, I opened up a sort of one-woman production company. Okay. So I've had contracts sort of coming right out of college to when I transitioned out of my environmental justice role. I was leaning pretty heavily on the work that I did with Cookout Productions, which was the name of my company. And then from there, I have now landed for Quality Digest as an editor and social media manager with them. But now I am here at Georgia Now News as the news director. So it's been quite the journey, but I'm happy to be here.
So talk to me. I mean, we're separated by a generation or two. I am, I think I'm Gen X. I think that's what I am because I'm not a boomer. I like to tell people I'm not a boomer.
You're right.
But the notion that we're building something that sounds a lot like a radio network or a radio station, but isn't really a radio station. We're an audio streaming station. We are a political and news talk platform for audio conversation. How did that come to you? When you first read about us and what we're looking to do, and we had that first conversation? Be honest. What were your immediate thoughts?
Oh, you want me to? When
I
you
want
say
you to be honest. Go on and be honest, girl. It's okay. This is the Ron. This is the Ron show, and Benji and Ty can't get on to you for what you say on the Ron show. So go right ahead.
Well, when I looked at the job description, it did say that this was a more progressive network, a more progressive outlet. But I think, just as of late with the recent, I want to say rebranding, but sometimes rebranding can be a little bit dishonest. But our brand colors, the red, white, and blue. I was like, oh, what do they mean by progressive? Like, let me do some double checking. And so I definitely looked up you guys first, the hosts of the shows, you, Tom Hartman, the other two shows. I was like, okay, who are these people? What are their views? What type of work would I be doing? What type of reporting would I need to be doing if we were to work together? But, we hopped on the call. I met you guys. I listened to the work and I was like, okay, they mean what they say. And, the red, the white, and the blue isn't too much to be afraid of.
So you're saying the colors scared you? Why did it feel like Fox Newsy or something like that?
It was just, it's the recent sort of, since the last 3 administrations, the American flag has taken a sort of, the iconography of the American flag has been, more right-leaning. Yeah. And so I was just like, oh, this might be a more right-leaning situation. But then I listened to your show and I was like, oh, never mind.
And here's the thing, I'll let folks behind the curtain a little bit on this. When we were looking at the logo, we loved the logo once we'd centered on what we wanted it to look like. And we got feedback from somebody, I forget who it was that Benji heard feedback from, but he said, so we're trying to make Georgia a blue state, and yet in the logo, Georgia's red. And we're like, oh my God, we didn't even look at it that way. But there it is. Yeah. We don't care about it. That's not what we're really concerned about. But hearing from a different perspective, from a younger perspective, what seeing a logo in red, white, and blue means is sort of interesting. I can't help but notice that, for example, that Mamdani, when he ran in New York City for mayor, he didn't use red, white, and blue colors for his signage. Neither did Kelsey Bond here in Atlanta. Rohit Malhotra did not use those same red, white, and blue colors either. I noticed that just something as simple as political street signs and campaign logos, folks are deviating from just simple red, white, and blue. And you know what? It kind of makes sense because it stands out. I get it.
Yeah. It does stand out, and it's a bit of a, I think in recent political times, it might be used as a bit of a dog whistle. I feel the examples you gave sort of, in my mind at least, they sort of support my point in the sense that the iconography of the flag has become more conservative and right leaning.
What a shame. We joked in the Biden administration that the Trump flag had it, the Trump people had their flag, and then we had our flag, and our flag was the American flag. We tried to take ownership of that. That just did not, I guess it didn't take root with the younger generation. So let me point this out, by the way, as well. While she may have been drawn to what the station does, between the news breaks, we have said to Alexis on a number of times, we want you just to deliver the news. What happens between the news breaks, we'll do that lifting. We want you to deliver the news, and you've done a fantastic job of that so far in the first few weeks on the air with us, and I certainly appreciate that. In fact, let's talk about some of the stories that you guys are working on right now. The big news of the day would be the Fonnie Willis case against Donald Trump, which is basically on the shelf until he's not in the Oval Office anymore. does seem to have a new prosecuting attorney.
The executive director of the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia, Peter J. Skandalakis, he appointed himself as the prosecuting authority in the election interference case that Trump has between Georgia and himself. And so I think he wrote in the press release that he was given like this sort of I think he said a hard drive of like 8 megabytes, and he had to comb through all of these documents to familiarize himself with the case, so he could appoint a different prosecutor. But as he said in the press release, he won't list the names or the reasons why. But there seemed to be a lot of people who declined the opportunity to preside as the prosecutor in this case.
Yeah.
So he appointed himself, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, especially since earlier this week, the Trump administration, he delivered some pardons, and 18 of the people who were on the pardons were some of the co-defendants that are in Fulton County who are listed on the case with him. So it'll be interesting to see how far this goes and how much traction they will, or not how much traction, the sort of the legal outcomes of this election, or especially since, as you mentioned earlier,
if he even advances that, he may not advance it. That's the thing that's of some concern. But the pardons really have no impact on the state cases because they're state cases. So Donald Trump's pardons mean nothing to those co-defendants, some of whom have taken plea deals already, and whatever they agreed to, they have to abide by. So there is that. But it'll be interesting to watch, as you said. I remember reading something earlier about the fact that he tried to find other prosecuting attorneys to take this on, obviously, and they all turned him down. Yeah. It's such a huge case, and it's such a unique and literally massive, as you mentioned, 8 terabytes. It's such a massive case that there's just only so many offices in the country that were even equipped to take on a case of this magnitude.
Absolutely. I accidentally said megabyte earlier, but you are correct. It was an 8 terabyte hard drive. And I think, of course, as I've said earlier, Skandalakis did not list the reasons why the other prosecutors turned down the role. However, I can imagine with some of the recent headlines of folks like Pam Bondi are going after some of the people who have criticized Trump, being a scary notion for these people's careers and things like that, not knowing how no longer being able to sort of trust how the highest office in the land will operate.
I have said this, again, this is my opinion, that intimidation is a tool of this administration. And I think that you may be right that may have had something to do with it. That's an insinuation that I don't think is a bit of a leap. But also, again, just the size and scope of the case in and of itself requires a proper amount of resources and staffing that just not many offices would have access to.
Yeah, I imagine it to be a massive undertaking, no matter who is prosecuting and no matter the outcome of the case.
Yeah. Well, listen, I've given you a few minutes here to kind of introduce yourself to the audience. For those who don't know, again, you may listen on Progressive Voices. You may listen to the show via podcast. Alexis Young is the news director, the information director, I should say, at Georgia Now. You'll hear her voice on newscast on the hour. In fact, she's going to work on some for the weekend and have things ready for Monday as well. And I'm eating into that time right now. But I just wanted to thank you for joining Georgia Now and for a little bit of time on the Ron Show today.
Absolutely, Ron. I was happy to make the call and happy to be here.
All right. We'll talk again soon.
Toodles. Have a great one.
Bye-bye. Did she just drop a toodles on me? Okay. So, let's drop into a quick break and come back. We do have some thoughts, I do anyway, on the Pete Skandalakis appointment. I am, how do I say this, skeptical that justice will be served. When the Ron Show returns, Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. So, count me among the skeptical that Pete Skandalakis will do the right thing when it comes to taking over prosecution of the Fulton County cases that Fani Willis and her team had put together. From Richard Fawcett, Danny Hakim at the New York Times. As the new prosecutor, Mr. Skandalakis now has the authority to steer the case in a number of directions, including taking it to trial as is, striking plea deals, more plea deals, dropping some charges, or striking the case altogether. Georgia State University law professor Anthony Michael Christ said he would have the same prosecutorial discretion afforded to any sitting prosecutor. He does have the obligation under Georgia law to review every individual case for which probable cause for prosecution exists and to make a determination based on an analysis of the facts whether to proceed. And he has an ethical obligation to not pursue charges where he doesn't believe he could secure a conviction. To me, that's the gray area right there. Whether or not he believes he could secure a conviction. Currently, of course, you can't go after person A, person one, right? Because he's president of the United States and you can't prosecute a sitting president of the United States. I'm also skeptical because, and I don't know this for a fact, and so maybe lumping him in with his cousin, Mitt Skandalakis, who used to be a prominent Georgia Republican politician, maybe that's not fair. I mean, you know, I have family members who vote opposite of the way I'd vote, so it wouldn't be fair to do that. But this isn't his first opportunity to have his hands on 2020 election interference cases. From the Atlanta Journal-Constitution file back in September of 2024. Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones sent a series of texts critical of fellow Republicans as he worked to help former President Donald Trump overturn his narrow defeat in the weeks following the 2020 election, according to documents obtained through a public records request first reported by the New York Times. The texts by Jones, who was then a state senator, were gathered by Special Prosecutor Pete Skandalakis as he investigated whether Jones should be charged in Fulton County's election interference case for serving as a GOP elector. He decided against seeking charges. Further into this piece, in one exchange on November 7th, just 4 days after the election, as Republicans geared up for dual U.S. Senate runoffs, Jones texted about potential election law changes with former state Senator Josh McCoon, who would soon win election to lead the Georgia GOP. Kemp will not call a special session. That guy, wrote Jones of the governor, who 3 days later went public with his decision not to call legislators back to Atlanta for a special legislative session to meet Trump's demands of overhauling voting rules. He also chastised Kemp and then U.S. Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue for not more forcefully backing Trump. He accused the Republicans of having, quote, abandoned Trump and said, quote, they have left Trump out to die in the field. Kemp's decision to oppose a special legislative session earned him Trump's wrath, and the former president recruited Perdue to wage an ill-fated primary challenge against him in 2022. In that race, Perdue said the 2020 contest had been, quote, rigged and stolen. Trump recently revived, then backed off his long-running feud with Brian Kemp. Skandalakis State Agency, the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia, was tasked with investigating Jones 2 years ago after a Fulton judge disqualified District Attorney Fonnie Willis due to a conflict of interest. Skandalakis, the council's executive director, had appointed himself to lead the probe that spring. The probe that determined that now Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, then a fake elector, warranted no scrutiny, judicially speaking. That's the guy now in charge of all the work that the Fulton County District Attorney's Office put in their racketeering case against Trump and his co-defenders. Now, if you want to hear some optimism, why he may actually take this case seriously, well, here's the thing. This court-imposed deadline that was required, it could have gone the other way. He had the choice to appoint a new prosecutor by a specified date or risk dismissal of the case altogether. So he didn't just let the case go away. But there are these few routes that could be taken. He could continue the prosecution as structured by Willis' office, meaning pursue the full indictment against Trump and co-defendants. I'm reading, by the way, from the International Business Times who put this together. Nice summation. I'll include it in the show notes. He could modify or narrow the scope, focusing on fewer defendants or fewer counts, possibly revising indictments or dropping certain charges against certain people. He could dismiss the case entirely, which would carry major implications for justice, precedent, and public confidence. From the International Business Times, one significant detail. While the case against Trump may be on hold during his presidency, other co-defendants are still subject to state prosecution, so Skandalakis' decision could affect dozens of people. More from the International Business Times, and I think it's worth hearing. With the prior prosecution removed for conflict concerns, which were stupid, Skandalakis carries the burden of restoring confidence in the integrity and neutrality of the investigation. The case rests on Georgia state law, meaning federal pardons or federal case outcomes don't automatically apply. Skandalakis decisions thus have unique consequences for state-level accountability. How he handles the appointment, the review process, and eventual prosecution or dismissal may shape how Georgia addresses politically charged cases in the future, especially those involving election integrity. There's also the financial and legal risk they bring up. If the case is dropped, Georgia and Fulton County, where I live and pay taxes, could face significant financial consequences, including potential reimbursement to defendants under state law. Another reason to maybe feel optimistic he'll carry through? Skandalakis has underscored how vast the evidence is and how complex the matter remains. There's a risk that delays or perceived sluggishness could undermine public trust. But as I spoke about at the top of the show, the same reasons that a lot of prosecuting attorneys may have been meek or less than enthusiastic to taking on this case, the scepter of lawfare from the current Department of Justice, that may actually be what has Pete Skandalakis feeling heat under his seat as well. No big deal, buddy. The world's watching. The White House is watching. All right, I have several tabs open, which means I have several stories that I still want to dive into, so we'll do that when the Ron Show returns. Thank you for listening on Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn, or wherever you podcast.
Broadcasting 5 days a week to make common sense common again. This is The Ron Show.
Heard weekdays, 4 to 6 p.m. on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn, or wherever you podcast. Today's Politically Georgia blog talks a good bit more about the deep fake video and the use of AI in campaigns, which I think I would say, if I had to guess, if you just did a poll of Americans, irrespective of party affiliation, like don't give it any context, just say, do you think AI-generated videos or AI-generated audio or likenesses of politicians should be made illegal for use in campaign ads? I guarantee you, like 93% of the country would say, absolutely. Reading to you from the Politically Georgia blog, Greg Bluestein, Tia Mitchell, Patricia Murphy, Adam Beam reporting on this. The deepfake video of Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff, produced by Republican Representative Mike Collins' campaign, has rippled through the 2026 Senate race, and it likely won't be the last AI stunt we see this cycle. Why do they know that? Because Mike Collins hasn't said, yeah, that was a mistake. We shouldn't do that. He hasn't taken it down either. If you haven't seen the video, I'll share it in the show notes. Here's what it sounded like. This sounds very much like Jon Ossoff because that's what AI can do.
Hi, it's Senator Jon Ossoff. I just voted to keep the government shut down. They say it'll hurt farmers, but I wouldn't know. I've only seen a farm on Instagram. And SNAP recipients don't think they're at my New York or California fundraisers. So who cares? Chuck Schumer said it was a good idea, and I could never say no to my boss.
So the AJC reporters put it to the leading Senate campaigns if they would, quote, commit not using deep fakes that misattribute or fabricate words or actions of their opponents to mislead voters. Jon Ossoff was the only one to flat out say yes. No one on the right was going to say yes. The only reason a candidate would need to use a deep fake to make up an opponent's words and manipulate a video to deceive Georgians is if they didn't think they could win on their own. Georgians don't take well to people who lie to them, Jon Ossoff said. Republican Derek Dooley's campaign mocked Collins for, quote, shooting himself in the foot, with the attack saying it will take a political outsider to beat Ossoff, not AI video distractions. Boy, they love that political outsider rhetoric, right? If you want a preview of what a general election against Senator Ossoff will be like with Collins as the Republican nominee, this is it, said Dooley aide Connor Whitney. Representative Buddy Carter didn't respond because Buddy Carter likes to swim in that swamp. Collins, meanwhile, leaned in. We're very pleased our ad got people talking about Jon Ossoff failing Georgians by shutting down the government, the campaign said in a statement, and will continue to use all methods permissible under the law to expose the deepfake notion that Ossoff is anything other than a far-left lackey for Chuck Schumer. I said it a day or two ago when I went over that story, and I'll say it again. Mike Collins is a scumbag. He is as MAGA gets. There is no floor, no low that you can descend to that would be the floor for Mike Collins. If he feels he needs to go lower than he already has to win, that's what Mike Collins will do. Moving on, I want to get back to the looming divorce between MAGA and Marjorie Taylor Greene, because it was days ago that we was it yesterday? We played some excerpts from the Laura Ingraham Donald Trump interview. I thought this one was a pretty telling moment.
Never going to be a country like what we have right now.
And does that
mean the Republicans have to talk about it, Laura.
And does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent.
We have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here.
No, you don't have. You don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put
How did we ever do it before?
Well,
I'll
give you an example. Right. In Georgia, they raided because they wanted illegal immigrants out. They had people from South Korea that made batteries all their lives. You know, making batteries are very complicated. It's not an easy thing and very dangerous. A lot of explosions, a lot of problems. They had like 500 or 600 people, early stages, to make batteries and to teach people how to do it. Well, they wanted them to get out of the country. You're going to need that, Laura. I mean, I know you and I disagree on this. You can't just say a country's coming in, going to invest $10 billion to build a plant, and going to take people off an unemployment line who haven't worked in 5 years, and they're going to start making missiles.
I don't understand, by the way, this missive that there's going to be people who have been sitting on unemployment lines for 5 years who are suddenly going to, I want to work at a battery plant. The conflation there is just astounding, first of all. If a company's going to invest $10 billion to build a manufacturing plant in another country, why wouldn't they also invest in, bringing the current workforce up to speed? I mean, that's kind of the reason that they've been lured to our country and our state in the first place, right? To create jobs, not to create jobs because jobs were created for other people to come here and get, and those people get to go wine and dine at fancy restaurants while the jobs we created are bussing tables. So anyway, this rift with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie on Thursday introduced a bill to, quote, aggressively phase out the H-1B program, according to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. She said it has, quote, been displacing American workers for decades. If we want the next generation to have the American dream, we must stop replacing them and start investing in... Man, Marjorie Taylor Greene is sounding more woke, more liberal, more fan of the working class by the minute. This is not at all the way a Republican talks, not at all the way MAGA talks. It's just fascinating to watch this rift as it continues to widen between she and Donald Trump. And speaking of, let me get to another piece here from Mediaite. Marjorie Taylor Greene joined CBS Mornings Friday and was asked to square her support for releasing the Jeffrey Epstein files, and President Donald Trump calling Republicans voting to do so stupid. This from CBS Mornings this morning.
The release of these documents, and the president denies hasn't been accused of wrongdoing. Only on CBS Mornings, we are joined now by Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Congresswoman, good morning.
I want to begin. Thanks for having me.
Good morning to you. I want to begin with the release of the Epstein files, the vote to release those files. You are on the side of releasing them, and you're on that side despite President Trump saying that only a very bad or stupid Republican would be standing where you are. Why is this so important to you?
It's for the victims. These women have been waiting, some of them for decades. I talked to several victims that were raped by Jeffrey Epstein back in the 90s. And so this is information that has needed to come out for a very long time, and the American people have demanded it. And so the American people deserve to see transparency from their government. Rich, powerful people should not be protected. That is completely wrong. And it's a message to victims everywhere, victims of rape, human trafficking, and children who are trapped in terrible situations, that the government will not protect the predators, that we will work hard to protect the victims.
So, Congresswoman, that all sounds reasonable. A lot of people agree with you. And so the question comes to mind, why is GOP leadership and the president himself so opposed to letting these files be released? As the Wall Street Journal put it, he looks like he has something to hide, even if he doesn't. So put on your political hat here. Why is he so opposed?
Right.
Well, I've talked to many of the women, and the women themselves have said that Donald Trump did nothing wrong. And even their attorney said that Donald Trump was the only one that helped them. So I'll just being very honest with you, it's something that I don't understand. I think it's a huge miscalculation. And I truly just stand with the women, and I think they deserve to be the ones that we're fighting for.
You can understand, Congresswoman, how in the absence of a compelling why, a reason from the White House, people jump to conclusions and assume the president must be implicated in some way. And then we have all of this new information that came out both from Republicans and Democrats. I know you were going through it as of Wednesday. I'll just highlight one email that's getting a lot of attention here. It's from Jeffrey Epstein in 2011, and he says, "The dog that hasn't barked is Trump." The email goes on from there. We don't understand the context. What do you make of this?
I don't know, not understanding the context of their conversation. And, of course, Jeffrey Epstein is dead, so we can't ask him himself what that means. There's many conversations in these emails. There's tens of thousands of pages. That email in particular came from the estate. We subpoenaed the estate on the Oversight Committee. I'm part of that investigation. So it would be good to have further information there. But there's many people. And, I've been looking at these emails, and I think it's a very interesting view into a world that most of us have never seen. It's like kind of like a web of global affairs, business connections, a very high and powerful people, foreign leaders, and it's just an interesting world, and even the intel community.
It is an interesting world. It makes me wonder, and I'll just put it baldly, do you think President Trump has something to hide here?
I don't, because I believe the women, and the women have said over and over again that Donald Trump did nothing wrong. Even Virginia Giuffre said it under oath, and she wrote it in her book. And so if we listen to the women, they say Donald Trump has done nothing wrong.
Small problem with that logic, though, is knowledge and not saying something is akin to doing something wrong. It's sanctioning it by letting it go, by seeing something and not saying something. Oh, my God. And then there's this, Megyn Kelly, the mental gymnastics, the ideological yoga she is putting herself and contorting herself into right now. It's exposing a lot more of her than I ever wanted to see, obviously. But take a listen to this.
As for Epstein, I've said this before, but just as a reminder, I do know somebody very, very close to this case who is in a position to know virtually everything. Not everything, but virtually everything. And this person has told me from the start, years and years ago, that Jeffrey Epstein, in this person's view, was not a pedophile. This is this person's view, who was there for a lot of this.
What?
But that he was into the barely legal type. Like he liked 15-year-old girls.
Not legal.
And I realize this is disgusting. I'm definitely not trying to make an excuse for this. I'm just giving you facts. That he wasn't into like 8-year-olds, but he liked the very young teen types that could pass for even younger than they were, but would look legal to a passerby.
They're not legal.
And that is what I believed, and that was what I reliably was told for many years. And it wasn't until we heard from Pam Bondi that they had tens of thousands of videos of alleged, forgive me, they used to call it kiddie porn, now they call it child sexual abuse material, on his computer, that for the first time I thought, oh, no, he was an actual pedophile. I mean, only a pedophile gets off on young children abuse videos. She's never clarified it. I don't know whether it's true. I have to be honest. I don't really trust Pam Bondi's word on the Epstein matters anymore. Yeah, so I don't know what's true about him, but we have yet to see anybody come forward and say, I was I was under 10. I was under 14 when I first came within his purview. Look, You can say that's a distinction without a difference.
No, it's not.
I think there is a difference. There's a difference between a 15-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There is a difference between a 15-year-old and a 5-year-old. There's 10 years difference. But when it comes into the eyes of the law, having sexual intercourse with a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old, it's still illegal. Ick. Also, let me just remind you something that Donald Trump himself said about teenage girls and dressing rooms and his access to them.
Well, I'll tell you the funniest is that I'll go backstage before a show, and everyone's getting dressed.
He just came strolling right in. There was no second to put a robe on or any sort of clothing or anything.
I standing there with no clothes, and you see these incredible-looking women.
Some girls were topless, other girls were naked.
Even more troubling, Trump also allegedly walked into the dressing room at the Miss Teen USA contest.
While contestants, some as young as 15, were changing.
So I sort of get away with things like that.
Yeah, he does, because they let you. He literally said so on a hot mic. 15, that number keeps coming up. Why does that number keep coming up? We may find out in the next 7 to 10 days. It's The Ron Show, Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn and wherever you podcast. One last point I want to make about the whole Epstein Trump thing. The response on the right of late has been, well, Joe Biden was president for 4 years. Why didn't he release the Epstein files? There's actually a pretty simple explanation for this, but you're not going to like it because it involves Democrats actually adhering to law and, honoring the process, et cetera, and so on. Jasmine Crockett actually answered this question, I thought, in a manner that's easy to grasp and makes a lot of sense.
Democrats not louder at that time about this release?
So a couple of things. Number one, you had pending litigation. So we're not the ones that went out making some campaign promises. In fact, the vast majority of Democrats had been campaigning on things such as affordability. I know that Kamala Harris had an actual plan so that people wouldn't necessarily be stuck in a mortgage for 50 years, but instead she wanted to make sure that they could have $25,000 down payment so that they can move into homes and make life overall more affordable. So we were focused on the bread and butter issues. This was a campaign issue of his. But while there was pending litigation, if you look at when Maxwell was finally convicted, and honestly, she just finished probably one of her last appeals here recently. You are not usually in the middle of an active case and then you say, oh yes, we're going to release everything. That's not how that goes. So she was prosecuted under the Biden-Harris administration. So no, this was not something to do at that point in time. At this point in time, it's clear that they are not interested in going forward with any additional prosecutions, in addition to the fact that the survivors have come forward. They are begging Congress to do this. This is not something that the survivors were necessarily doing at that time. They were still believing in the system and hoping that it would work.
What's your sense? The survivors obviously have been on Capitol Hill, and of course many of them endured just horrific things. They have said it should not be on them to provide a list of the people that they encountered. Do you, in the course of your work on the committee and perhaps discussions with them, have any understanding or thinking that they may change their position on that we may see a list from them?
I don't think so. Let me tell you something. There's been recent reporting where MAGA seems to be upset because I have to pay for security. I'm actually upset that I have to pay for security as well.
Yes.
The threats that come with being on the other side of this president are significant and serious. And so when you have a list of women and they are the ones that are making these claims, for anybody that doesn't want to believe the truth, then they will start to go after them. They will start to threaten their families. It would be better if we had the contemporaneous reports from law enforcement where they called in at those moments and gave the reports of what was happening. It's kind of like the birthday letter that he wants to pretend is a hoax. That was a contemporaneous writing at that time. This was not produced in real time, and they don't want it to be seen as partisan or political. They just want people to believe in the facts. And so if it is that they reported this maybe even before he was president, then maybe people will actually believe it versus the hate that they get thrown at them in this moment. So no, I don't think that they'll do it. I think it's the smartest thing that they can do for safety. It is sad that we have survivors that feel like they can't be safe from an American president and his cronies, but that's where we are.
By the way, she mentioned the fact that she's catching some heat from folks because she had to spend, I think it was about $75,000 on travel and security because she feels very much threatened whenever she goes, well, just about anywhere. So she's catching a lot of flack for that. And by the way, I was listening a little bit this afternoon. Eric Erickson was just reveling in how Democrats are so focused on Epstein that they're ignoring other things that they could really be harping on, like Kash Patel's illegal travel during the shutdown, using the FBI private jet when he was told not to. Yeah, and then, of course, a former FBI official who brought that to light was he was fired. Let me read to you from, where is this coming from? From U Politics, a top official who oversaw aviation at the Federal Bureau of Investigation has been fired after FBI Director Kash Patel came under scrutiny after news reports revealed his use of an agency jet to attend his musician girlfriend's performance. Oh, important stuff we're using the FBI jet there for, Kash. But where's Doge? Kash has been under a harsh media spotlight since he assumed office. Even MAGA influencers have called his performance embarrassing. Steve Palmer, an agent who has worked at the Bureau since 1998, was fired from the position as head of the FBI's Critical Incident Response Group, which is responsible for handling major security threats and overseeing the FBI's aviation units. His exit was confirmed by the agency along with the announcement of the new department head. Palmer was told to either resign immediately or face termination in response to Patel's anger over the scrutiny of his travel logs, according to 3 unnamed sources. Patel had reportedly become furious over stories published after he used his FBI jet to attend his girlfriend, country singer Alexis Wilkins' performance of the national anthem at a wrestling match. Really? That's what you... Oh, my God. A day after the performance, Patel reposted pictures of himself and Wilkins together on his official X account. Flight logs publicly available on FlightAware showed that Patel's jet, NC-78JH, had landed at an airport in State College, Pennsylvania on October 25th. On Sunday, the movement of N708JH was blocked on FlightAware. A message generates stating that the jet is, quote, not available for public tracking per request from the owner-operator. FBI directors are required to use government aircraft for personal or business ventures in efforts to maintain secure communications. The public outcry from Patel's weekend comes after he had publicly criticized previous directors for using taxpayer-funded jets for personal use. On Sunday, Patel released a lengthy statement on X amid the controversy, writing that he was proud of his work at the FBI but did not stand for, quote, baseless rumors or the noise from uninformed internet anarchists and the fake news. Another story, the very right-wing Eric Erickson said, the Democrats aren't paying attention to this either. They could totally make some hay with this, but they're so focused on Epstein. About the fact that he went to the Twitter X platform and sort of tipped off a terror plot and a terrorist got away. This from SAN.com. FBI Director Kash Patel faced internal backlash over 2 separate controversies in the same week, according to the reporting from the Wall Street Journal. Patel drew complaints from the Justice Department for a premature social media post about a terror probe, while simultaneously drawing criticism for his use of a government jet for personalized travel during the government shutdown. Here's the one about the terror plot. Justice Department leaders, he and Pam Bondi do not get along, by the way, complained to the White House that FBI Director Kash Patel premature social media posts disrupted a terror investigation. The Wall Street Journal reporting, on Halloween morning at 7:32 a.m., Patel announced the FBI had, quote, thwarted a potential terror attack in Michigan, but the Journal noted that no criminal charges had been filed. Local police weren't aware of any details. According to court filings, after the arrest became public, 2 associates of the suspects in New Jersey and Washington State moved up plans to leave the country. Prosecutors did not file a formal 93-page complaint detailing the alleged plot until the following Saturday. So potential terrorists got away. The director of the FBI aided with potential terrorists possibly fleeing the country. Could you imagine had that happened prior to, 9/11? What sort of scrutiny an FBI director would have had for his role in letting a couple of Al-Qaeda operatives slip out of the country prior to a terror attack of something of that magnitude, or any magnitude, honestly. This is what happens when your FBI director is just some right-wing blogosphere celebrity who hawks creepy children's books about King Trump and sells merch online in the process of seeing his profile raised by being a Trump acolyte. And that just makes our lives a little bit more dangerous as Americans. Did I say a little bit? I really should say a lot. I mean, potentially, anyway. Hopefully, we'll never know that to be the case. But do you sleep easy at night knowing that that guy's in charge of the FBI and that this administration is in charge? No, of course not. Thank you so much for listening to The Ron Show. We air weekdays 4 to 6 p.m. on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn, or wherever you podcast. Show notes, as always, at ronshowatl.com.
Follow The Ron Show on Instagram at Ron Show Radio.
Normally, I would be well into my weekend. However, we do have breaking news that I wanted to share with you. This dropped just a little after 4 o'clock Eastern on Friday from CBS News. A federal appeals court upheld hate crime convictions of the 3 men who chased Ahmaud Arbery through their Georgia subdivision with pickup trucks before one of them killed him with a shotgun. Arbery, a 25-year-old black man, had been jogging in the neighborhood. A 3-judge panel of the 11th Circuit of Appeals took well over a year to rule after attorneys for the defendants urged the judges in March 2024 to overturn the case, arguing the men's history of racist text messages and social media posts failed to prove they targeted Arbery because of his race. He just happened to be a black man that they happened to target. Federal prosecutors used those posts and messages in 2022 to persuade a jury that Arbery's killing was motivated by, quote, pent-up racial anger. Even if the appeals judges had thrown out their hate crime convictions, the trio faced no immediate reprieve from prison. That's because they're also serving life terms for murder after being convicted in a Georgia state court. More from CBS News. Father and son Greg and Travis McMichael armed themselves and used a pickup truck to pursue 25-year-old Arbery after spotting him running in their neighborhood just outside the port city of Brunswick. And by running, we mean jogging. Anyway, this was February 23rd, 2020. Can you believe it's been 5 years? A neighbor, William Roddy Bryan, joined the chase and recorded cell phone video of Travis McMichael shooting Arbery at close range. More than 2 months passed without arrests until Bryan's graphic video of the killing leaked online. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation took over the case from local police as outrage over Arbery's death became part of a national outcry over racial injustice. Charges soon followed. I am almost a little concerned that this story is coming up now while you-know-who is doling out pardons. Anyway, in a November 2021 interview with CBS Mornings, Arbery's mother, Wanda Cooper Jones, said the guilty verdicts were a, quote, big victory, adding, I don't think without that video we would have had any arrests, nevertheless, a trial. All 3 men were convicted of murder by a state court in late 2021. After a second trial in U.S. District Court in early 2022, a jury found the trio guilty of hate crimes and attempted kidnapping. In her 2021 interview, Cooper Jones had a message to the 3 men. We finally got justice for Ahmaud. I'm so sorry that your bad decisions made all of my family suffer to this extreme, but it was your decisions that got us here. She noted that his death was the impetus behind a hate crime law enacted in the state in 2020. Shadi Abu Said at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, quoting Arbery's father, Marcus, telling the Associated Press, everybody knew this was racially motivated. All you got to do is look at the video. That told everything. Abu Said, quoting his mother, Wanda Cooper Jones, they killed Ahmaud because of the color of his skin, and they will never get out of jail. I have a couple little odds and ends that I want to toss out here before I wrap for the weekend. Patricia Murphy wrote a fantastic op-ed, a little biopic about friend of the show, Melita Easters, executive director of the Georgia Win List. It's so lovely. I shared it on the Ron Show Facebook page. I think it's Ron Show ATL on Facebook. The headline really caught my attention. Georgia's never had a woman governor. Melita Easters plans to change that. And I immediately thought, did Melita decide she's running for governor and did not tell me? I would have been so upset if she hadn't immediately raced to my show to make that announcement. That's not what she's doing. No, she's the executive director of the Georgia Win List, something of a state-like version of Emily's List. And she's been doing that for more than a quarter of a century. essentially springing up the Georgia win list from her living room nearly 3 decades ago as she tells the story. And I mean, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Hopefully you can get past the paywall to read it yourself. Well, you know what? I'll give you a piece of it because it just speaks so endearingly of Melita, and anybody that knows her knows that she's an endearing figure and one that is motivational and supportive for women who run for office in this state, those who are pro-choice. Patricia writing, in another life, you could imagine Melita Easters as a grand society hostess. Her South Georgia accent, strawberry blonde bob, and affinity for pimento cheese recipes all recall a time when powerful women in Georgia might have hosted parties instead of running them. But in reality, Easters is a thoroughly modern power player in Georgia politics, constantly working her social and professional networks to get pro-choice Democratic women elected to the Georgia legislature. Eventually, she says, one will make it to the governor's mansion too. We do have 2 women running for the Democratic nomination for governor here in the state of Georgia. Keisha Lance Bottoms, Representative Ruo Roman, who is cited in this article. There are many, many examples of smart, strong, well-funded women candidates who have lost to mediocre men in Georgia, Melita told Patricia Murphy. That is her, man. Misogyny is alive and well in both parties, she said. She says, I just view working to elect women as my form of resistance in trying to make the world a better place for my grandchildren. Easters has 8 practically perfect grandchildren, but she's not your average grandma. She grew up in tiny Lenox, Georgia, population 752, near Adel, which is, quote, so close to hell you can see sparks, the local joke goes, referring to the name of the nearby town. That's where Easters found her earliest political aspiration among her mother's cookbooks, where a recipe for Senate white bean soup was printed on thick congressional stationery. The recipe had been sent by the Easters Congresswoman, Representative Iris Blitch, the first woman elected to Congress from Georgia. There was always evidence to me with that recipe that women could be in politics, she recalled. That's cool. After college, a highly publicized divorce, and time as a journalist and press aide for Democratic campaigns, Easters co-founded Georgia Winlist after her friend Mary Margaret Oliver lost the Democratic primary for lieutenant governor in 1998 in a runoff to Mark Taylor. Oliver had originally finished in first place of 6 candidates on Election Day. Easter saying, she was the most qualified woman ever to seek statewide office. A group of us who had supported her said, enough is enough with the good old boy system. We've got to do something. The result was a local version of Emily's List, the Washington, D.C.-based PAC founded to elect pro-choice Democratic women to Congress. What began as a volunteer and fundraising group in Georgia added candidate recruitment, endorsements, and eventually campaign trainings for potential candidates and staff alike. Georgia Winlist is an amazing organization, by the way. Since then, the Winlist has helped elect more than 100 women to the Georgia legislature, including 53 women currently serving. They've trained 2,300 women to run for office or work in campaigns with classes on field operations, fundraising, messaging, and communications, and the legislative process. Among the first class of the Winlist Academy were Representative Nikema Williams, my congresswoman, and former State Senator Jen Jordan, the Democratic nominee for Attorney General in 2022. State Representative Stacey Evans joined the board just after she graduated from law school. Dozens more populate the General Assembly as members or staffers. In ways large and small, they all face some version of the challenges Easters had originally set out to make better. When we started, it was harder for the women to raise money. They weren't taken as seriously, she said. At the General Assembly, they were still kind of patted on the head and called little lady. Over time, female candidates said the group became the teacher network, funding source, and sounding board they never had before, essentially a new old girls network. State Representative Ruo Roman from Duluth said an early Winlist endorsement and late influx of cash helped at critical points in her first race for the state house, specifically when her opponent sent out an attack mailer in the final weeks of the campaign. She said, we always expected an attack ad, but we didn't think it was going to come that late. When I called Melita, Georgia Winlist was able to essentially rush a donation to my campaign to cover a responding mailer. State Senator Sonia Halpern from Atlanta, seasoned business leader by the time she ran for office the first time, but she said an endorsement from Winlist gave her early credibility in special election with a short window to build a campaign. It's a validation, she said. It lets people know that you are a serious candidate to be endorsed by Melita Easters at Georgia Winlist. I love that Patricia Murphy did this profile on Melita. It's just a fantastic piece. There's a few more paragraphs to this piece, but I just wanted to bask in the glow of seeing Melita get her due at this point. And from a personal note, I've mentioned this a few times before bringing her on the show, and she's not coming on today because I just, let her enjoy the day, I'm sure she's taping an episode of the Georgia Gang for WAGA Fox TV5 too as well. So I just wanted to just rave about her a little bit, just to gloat a little bit. She was the very first person I had on my show more than 3 years ago. An unknown, and I mean, I'm not like a well-known now, but I was a definite unknown at the time when I reached out to her and said, hey, I'm just this nutty little guy in his late 40s here in Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta, who's going to do a 5-day-a-week Georgia-based political talk show, and I'd love to have you on my show. Who in their right mind would get an email from a Gmail account with a show name, but nothing much more to it than that, and say, yeah, sure, I'll do it? Melita did. And that's, that's a testament. She and I stay in touch frequently and often, off the air as much as on, and get together for lunch every once in a while. In fact, we're due for one of those. I owe her a lunch. I just wanted to, thank Patricia for writing that piece. I thought it was fantastic. I'll include it in the show notes at ronshowatl.com so that you can enjoy it as well. If you can get past that paywall, you heard a good bit of it here and now on The Ron Show, because Melita Easters definitely deserves that much, if not more, from this show and women throughout the state. Final segment of today's Ron Show, and for the week, the weekend is here. I am exhausted, but I got to be honest with you, I was really jacked. I got a little boost of energy when I saw this headline from WSB Television. Take a listen to this.
Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens wants to see MARTA expand into Cobb and Gwinnett counties and plans to work on that as part of his second-term agenda.
Now new at 4 o'clock, Channel 2's Richard Elliott sat down exclusively with Atlanta's mayor. Richard joins us here in studio with Dickens' other plans for his next 4 years.
Yeah, we were able to sit down one-on-one with Mayor Dickens this morning. If he's able to convince Cobb and Gwinnett voters to allow MARTA expansion there, that of course would be huge. But he's also wanting to tackle affordable housing, homelessness, youth graduation rates, while also keeping an eye on keeping crime down in the city.
Is Mayor Andre Dickens trying to get on my good side? Are you trying to be sweet on me? Oh, I can't stay mad at you, Andre. I'm loving this. No, I love this kind of conversation. And what he needs to do, well, I'm sitting here giving him advice. What he ought to do, I believe he needs to do, is he needs to find a coalition of people. I'm happy to join that mayor's committee, sir. He has an LGBTQI plus committee too, by the way. I'd be happy to sit on that. But this is another little committee I would gladly get on, and I'm sure the folks behind Beltline Rail would as well. Oh, they're probably not happy. See, you complicate things, Mayor Andre. It's not us, it's you. But no, this is positive stuff that he's trying to talk about being bullish on MARTA and expansion into Cobb and Gwinnett counties. That is so vital, so necessary. It's actually 3 decades behind, where maybe even 5. Let's go back to the implementation of MARTA from the jump. Like it should have all along, but we can't go back and undo history and all the subtle and not so subtle racism that kept MARTA within the confines of Atlanta, Fulton, and DeKalb counties. And now we have limited reach into Clayton, mostly along the bus lines. But now is, in fact, it's too late. I keep saying now's the time to act. It's actually, we're really late on acting on this sort of stuff because the traffic issues that we're dealing with in Atlanta, I have said this many times on this show, are going to be what curbs this region's growth and this state's economy if we cannot continue to see Atlanta grow at a rate that it is potential to have at its disposal. We got to deal with mass transit. We have to have a stronger MARTA. And yes, he's dare I say, Mayor Andre Dickens is right here. MARTA's got to go to Cobb. It does. It needs to go to the Battery for sure. You need to connect Midtown and in-town Atlanta to the Battery. Cobb County built it, but there's only the one way to get there. And honestly, there's not enough affordable parking to get there. And even if you do pay to park, it's a ton of walking and a ton of waiting, getting in and out after a Braves game or a big event, something like that. But connecting all the way to Marietta and into Kennesaw, near the university, How huge would that be if you were a Clayton County parent and your kid got accepted to Kennesaw State University? I had this happen recently. I was taking a family up there to look at rental properties or even something to potentially buy in Kennesaw because the kids are going to school there now. You wouldn't have to do that. Think of the money you're saving on housing and groceries if your child can go to Kennesaw State while living in Jonesboro or Morrow or Fayetteville. Just catch the MARTA each morning. I mean, yeah, it's going to be about a half hour, 45-minute, train ride, but they can be working on that homework that they didn't do the night before, brushing up on the studies for that test that they're going to take because they didn't study the night before. These are all positive steps. These are the sorts of things that can be done and do happen in major cities with reliable mass transit. Anyway, let me listen a little bit to this piece from WSB Channel 2 because I'm all jacked about it.
I'm so grateful that, 85% of Atlantans said you're headed in the right direction.
God, politicians lie so much. He had no major opposition. He had no moneyed opposition. And 100% of Atlantans didn't show up to vote. So no, not 85% of it. 85% of the Atlantans that did show up to vote in an off-year election reelected you. But again, you had no major opposition. This was a slam dunk, and you still only got 85%. Okay, I'm trying to let bygones be bygones. New era, kumbaya, friendly moment. Here we go.
In an exclusive one-on-one interview, Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens laid out his plans for his next 4 years after his landslide election victory. One of his big pushes will be to make transportation not just an Atlanta issue, but a true regional issue, one that needs a regional transportation authority, and that means MARTA.
Yes.
Now it's time to go kind of regional. The things that people complain about the most, which used to be crime, they don't complain about that as much as they do traffic now, and transportation, the lack of transit.
But tackling a regional MARTA plan won't be easy. Cobb and Gwinnett voters have rejected it every time for 50 years, but he believes if he can convince them that MARTA is safe and on time and can still get better, they may finally come around.
I really want Gwinnett and Cobb to start thinking about what it would look like to have public transit in their communities that is, connected to the city.
Yes, 1,000%. I know a lot of the folks that complain about MARTA. It's not being on time and cleanliness and yada, yada, yada. MARTA is a lot like a poor person who aspires to be more than that poor person. You know what I mean? Like the margin for error is so razor thin that if you mess up, you're kind of screwed. MARTA doesn't have the kind of budget that they can deal with big problems all the time when, say, example, COVID or a recession or something like that comes around and ridership goes down and the funds go down. MARTA is the largest mass transit authority in the country, the largest system in the country that doesn't get a dime of state funding. So MARTA is hindered by the kind of shortcomings that come with, again, having very little margin for error when problems do arise, and they do for every mass transit agency, okay? Charlotte, for example, has taken on an enthusiastic, a bullish mindset when it comes to regional mass transit. They are in a position where they can leapfrog Atlanta as the regional hub if Atlanta doesn't overcome its late 20th century racism. And the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets. We always pearl clutch about, oh my God, that's so expensive. Absolutely. Mass transit ain't cheap. No doubt about it. It does cost more than just laying asphalt. But we've been laying asphalt and laying asphalt and laying asphalt and laying asphalt and laying asphalt, additional lanes, overpass. And is traffic any better in Metro Atlanta as a result? No. It can't even keep pace with the onslaught of traffic that keeps growing in this region. And I'm not saying you stop doing that, but I am saying, hi, Georgia Department of Transportation, we need to have a discussion about adding to the one thing that you do. And that needs to be mass transit. Mayor Dickens, yes, by all means, politic in Cobb, politic in Gwinnett. He is uniquely in a position, by the way, to do just that because he is the chair of the Atlanta Regional Commission, which, is chaired by politicians from other cities, other counties in and around Metro Atlanta. Aha! So he can have this conversation with a lot of these elected leaders. And if it's gonna come down to referendums again in Cobb and Gwinnett, I don't know. I feel like things are a little bit better in Cobb for sure. I feel like the numbers, the votes are there in Gwinnett, but again, it's going to be about the sales pitch. And we're going to have to start looking at the State House and the governors, or the governor, and the gubernatorial candidates, because I've been saying this for a while too. I'm waiting on that gubernatorial candidate that's sitting here saying, you know what? Not only does the largest city in the state need a mass transit authority that is representative of an international city like Atlanta, but we need to start connecting the rest of the state to it, to the world's busiest airport, from Augusta, from Athens, from just outside of Chattanooga, from Macon, from Columbus, from Savannah by Macon, McDonough to Columbus, to Atlanta. Yeah, dream big. That's the sort of thing we used to do. We used to do, we can put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. We can't even have mass transit that gets us from Roswell to the airport. We need to do this. And I'm heartened to hear that that's something that he's going to be bullish on. He talks a little bit more in this piece about affordable housing in the city, for sure. One of the ways you can make housing more affordable in the city is by making it so that people don't have to live in the city to work in the city if they don't want to. You can't buy a nice $300,000 house to raise a family in a lot of the city of Atlanta, but you can do that in a Fayetteville, a Riverdale, a Morrow, a Jonesboro, a Forest Park. Forest Park, you can have a McMansion for $300,000 in Forest Park. So if you have the rail network that allows people to live in a Fayetteville, a Riverdale, a Morrow, a McDonough, and work in the city of Atlanta, you're taking vehicles off the interstate and off your city streets that you're having to maintain without those drivers and their suburban assault vehicles tearing up your roads and curbs and whatnot. You're strengthening the housing stock in the city by lessening the demand, which makes the supply more attainable and affordable. And I know there may be property owners who are going, no, I want to be able to sell my 2-bed, 1-bath, tiny house in this established neighborhood for an inflated value. I get that. And it's going to continue to grow in value, just not at the ridiculous pace. It's okay to I'm a realtor, man. I'm sitting here talking as a realtor. Like, I get it. People want to get max value for their home, but Metro Atlanta continues to grow. And at some point, the traffic is going to mitigate that. And then you're going to start seeing less return on your investment. And you want better return. Trust me when I tell you, a more walkable, accessible metro area, not just city, but metro area, is one of those rising tide lifting all boats kind of situations, because housing becomes more attractive in the outlying communities, and it still looks attractive in the city because you're not dealing with traffic, you're not dealing with the smog from the traffic, the heat dome from the smog in the traffic. You can start turning 4-lane roads into 2-lane roads with some curbing and some medians and some greenery and, beautification. This is a win-win, and I'm happy to hear that he is bullish about that. I really wish he'd get his mind back right about the Beltline rail, but that's another matter for another rant. I'm just happy to hear that he, as the mayor of Atlanta, he is the lightning rod for this entire metro area, is bullish about growing the regional's mass transit authority. And I believe it should be under one auspice anyway. I know Gwinnett has their thing, Cobb has it really does need to be under one envelope. And it would help if the state, again, gubernatorial candidates get on board, state legislative candidates and politicians get on board with this. This is good, not just for Atlanta, but for the region and the entire state on the whole. All right, that's going to do it for today's Ron Show. Thank you so much for listening. We air weekdays 4 to 6 p.m. on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn or every podcast. Show notes, as always, at RonShowATL.com. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.